I'm in the circle now. All right. Hey, hey, great. I did not pick that music, actually. Anyway, I'm here to talk about one of my favorite topics, private marketplaces, the rise of private marketplaces. And I thought I'd start with just a quick story about kind of how I started encountering the promise of private marketplaces a few years ago. It was about actually 4.5 or 5 years ago, and I was at a company other than Business Insider. And we had just started to partner with a company that was an ad network that had just recently pivoted to become an SSP, and we're having a lot of initial success. And we were kind of the sales force that was going out to market with that. And I had been leading a direct sales force that was selling mostly sponsorships and these kinds of things up until that point. And very quickly learned that I didn't know a lot about programmatic. And it was a really exciting time because I finally was kind of getting a peek behind the other side of the curtain, and I had a lot of fun. And as I was talking to advertisers across the industry, different market segments, agencies, trading desks, et cetera, they were all saying something that was really coming together and coalescing on one theme, which was, you know, the power of the open marketplace is incredible, the open exchange. But it'd be really nice with some of our best partners if we could somehow apply those techniques to pools of inventory that we know are especially good for us. And of course, then there goes the birth of the private exchange, and it was a great time. And I talked to everyone, they're all nodding their heads and all these kinds of things. This is a good thing. We're really excited about this. We're going to do more with this. So as I decided to leave that company and was interviewing at Business Insider, very central to my whole strategy at Business Insider was to take the direct sales force and help drive demand for private marketplaces as a part of our overall sales strategy. We were going to go to market, indirect and direct, locked together, and I would talk to partners. I'm like, hey, is this smart? Is this good? They're all nodding their heads. It's good. So I went to the board and I pitched this as part of the job interview process. President, CEO, thumbs up. I get hired. And then we kind of hit the what Gartner calls the trough of disillusionment, which is part of the hype cycle, as they call it. So there's all this excitement, and all of a sudden, the promise isn't necessarily living up to the reality. So just as a reminder, I told my board, is this going to work? There we go. That's what I told my board. And what's happening is there are a whole host of people kicking tires, maybe actually setting up a PMP, and if they set it up, in many cases, doing virtually nothing with this. So I'm feeling like I'm being punked by the entire industry. And the only thing that really kind of gives me consolation is there are all sorts of ad tech vendors that we're partnered with who are feeling punked too. There are other people like, I don't know why it's not working. But it's clearly not doing a lot. We even had some people who did tests that worked really well, and they say, we're not going to continue with the test because no one else will do this with us. This is working, but nothing else is kind of matching what we're doing here. Doesn't scale, sorry. So we go on and we go on. And I'm now a year into the job. Fortunately, other things are working, so I'm not necessarily at jeopardy at the moment. But this is clearly kind of a disappointment. And about the time I'm like, well, maybe we should just stop talking about private marketplaces. It seems like everyone else is. We start seeing more and more and more people set up private marketplaces. We start seeing more and more people actually transacting at fairly large volumes. We see people requesting additions and augmentations to the private marketplace. And suddenly, as we enter 2014, we have over 150 private marketplaces in place, many of them customized to very specific advertisers or in some cases campaigns. And now I pull this slide back up in front of my board and say, hey, it is huge. It is working. And today, we're seeing similar kinds of success. And there are a whole host of reasons for that success. And we're kind of coming out of that trough of disillusionment. There are some things that are really working well. Probably the biggest thing, fresh cookies. And by the way, this photo is from a site called Crepes of Wrath.net. It's run by our office manager at Business Insider. She's awesome. And if you like fresh cookies or you know someone who bakes and you want fresh cookies, send them there. It's awesome. They're like 8 recipes. They're all great. She brings in cookies to the office. It's awesome. So anyway, it's a real important reason why you would have a private marketplace. We put you way up in line, and you get to look over all the cookies and pick which ones you want before the rest of the people can even get in the store. It's really powerful. And for many people, that's enough reason to have a private marketplace. Full stop, it's done. We set it up, it's working, we're seeing more, we'll buy what we like, thank you very much. But for some of our partners, they're saying, hey, give me more. And And we've done a bunch of things that actually can add incremental value to the PMP. Our first-party data is a really powerful thing that we can now push through the PMP. So for example, we can tell people who are looking for social influencers what people are actually sharing content via social networks frequently. We can talk to you about who's reading lots of content on financial matters, politics matters, who's a Democrat, who's a Republican. Those kinds of things can be pushed through in the private marketplace and can add value to some of these deals. We can also customize deal terms. There are all sorts of ways we can do that, hence the name custom. But one of the common ones is if an advertiser has ad creative that isn't typically being sold or offered on the open exchange, we can take that, say a billboard, say a 300 by 1020, push downs, those kinds of things. We can create customized deals for that. And we can also create hooks that go into the direct deals that we're doing and kind of marry the two together, which leads to prioritization. One of the things that I get terribly excited about is we have a rather large native business as well, where we're creating content for brands or promoting content that brands give us. And we can now kind of retarget on our own site people who've read that branded content. So we can push that through, and we can give you first look at those people who are now reading your content and doing really interesting things to follow up that engagement with the content with a message that might be a little bit more down funnel. Kind of cool. I'm excited about it, at least. And then finally, the thing I think is just starting to really take off is what I'm calling Contextual Plus. We can push through, hey, this is on the tech channel, the finance channel, politics, whatever it might be. And a lot of private marketplaces can do that. But we're now starting to push much more granular contextual data to our PMP partners. And that allows us to do some really interesting things marrying creative to your PMP buys. So for instance, one of our car manufacturers that we work with regularly, a luxury car manufacturer, has noticed in their research that their customers are crazy for Apple products. Now, I know everyone's crazy for Apple, but even more crazy than the average person for Apple products. So we're able to push, hey, this article is that we're covering Apple right now. Maybe you want to have a specific message tied to that. Or maybe, let's say, and this hasn't happened, but I think it'd be cool, there's someone who's competing against the iPhone. Why don't you put an anti-iPhone pro brand X message using that same Apple contextual target? Or if you're a financial services company, we cover earnings reports for hundreds of companies. Why don't you advertise when we're talking about the earning results for a particular quarter? Some really interesting things. All of these examples and others I think are important because we're creating additional value based on the environment where the ad is being seen and the success that the advertiser has seen in the past in that environment. This is not for every advertiser. I think about if we created a PMP for every person that we worked with, kind of like driving across country and only eating at small diners and signing up for loyalty cards at each place that you're going along the way, even though you never plan to go there again. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. But for those partners where you're seeing success on the direct side and want to extend that programmatically, or someone who's seen success in the open marketplace or open exchange and want to go into a private marketplace, there's a tremendous amount of value here. But there's also some problems still, and I think it's important that we talk about that. The first one is people who think that machines can just connect to machines, no need to talk any longer, a private marketplace, whammo, presto, set it, forget it, we're done, rarely see the kind of success they want. And I know there was a session earlier where we're talking about like, hey, this has to scale and these kinds of things. I'm not talking about extended meetings over multiple days to set up our PMP strategy. Give us 15 minutes on the phone as we're setting it up, and we can start making some suggestions on what should we put in there, what shouldn't we put in there. And also, when things are running, how's it working? Are we matching enough cookies for this to be interesting to you? Are there different things that we should be doing? Those discussions are extremely important to the success of a PMP. And again, we're talking 5 to 15-minute phone conversations or a coffee or something. We're not talking, locked up in a boardroom for half a day. So first myth. Second myth, the direct sales team and correspondingly the team buying direct programs on the agency side don't need to be involved in this in any way. There's some kind of thought that like programmatic and direct sales are in separate pool lanes and we can just leave them there and they'll never cross. Increasingly, they are crossing, and the organizations that think about the technology stack that's kind of serving all of these advertisers and deals, and also the team that's also managing that have to be cross-trained and cross-integrated in ways that are a little bit more important. I'll give you 2 examples why that's important. Earlier this year, we closed for us a fairly substantial deal. It was a bunch of content and as part of a sponsorship around a particular topic that they were kind of roadblocking and kind of adding thought leadership to. There was guaranteed ad buy on this deal. And then there was a very large amount of spend happening in the P&P, and they were all connected together. The kind of agency of record, I just use quotey fingers. I hate quotey fingers. I don't know why I did that. But anyway, the agency that was doing this was actually the managed services division of a DSP. So content, guaranteed buy, insertion orders being exchanged with the DSP, and of course the PMP. Another example, we're seeing between 5 and 10% of the RFPs we get now saying, please include 30% of the buy as part of a programmatic delivery mechanism on our direct deals. So the idea that you have this programmatic team swimming in this lane and a direct team and the operations and the technologies are all in separate lanes just doesn't work any longer. We need to combine both the ad stacks and the workflows from those two groups to be successful on the buy side and on the sell side. And then finally, the last myth I'll bring up, and I hate doing this, what a bummer. Hey, check your work, everyone, including publishers. A lot of PMPs don't work. I did it again. Why am I doing the quotey fingers? Anyway, they don't work simply because they weren't set up properly. Every DSP connects a little bit differently to the SSP of choice. There can be, just fat fingers. One number is off in terms of kind of setting up a deal ID, whatever it might be. It's something like, we're not seeing any inventory. This sucks. Let's just go back to the open. Just, it may not be working, or it may literally not be working. And please, let's just all check that one more time before we move on. So, assuming you get all these things right and it's working for you, and you've got your publishers or your clients that you've really got a deep relationship with, and we can build on that relationship in the P&P, I think this is the hinge that ultimately connects the two sides of the business that have been largely separated for quite some time. And that leads us then to this other really exciting development, automated guaranteed, programmatic direct, whatever we want to call it. And we really all should call it the same thing, right? Like, I think basically the people in this room decide what we're going to call these things. Let's agree, please, because this is getting confusing. But at any rate, the idea of also now marrying in future buys and guaranteed inventory and having that somehow interact with the PMP and the open is terribly exciting. And I think this is just the beginning of the kind of thing that we can do. And those direct client to advertiser or advertiser to publisher relationships is the hinge that allows this to, I think, be successful in many places. So if I leave you with 3 things from this talk, I hope they're this, maybe there are others. Hey, there was a lot of hype. If you said, I tried that 2 years ago, it didn't really work for me, give it another try. Kick the tires, put a little thought into where this might add value. Secondly, hey, let's just keep talking to each other. We still can do that. It does not require a ton of talk. There's a lot of efficiency here, but we still do need to kind of have the discussion on how things are working. And when you, the buyers, give that to us, the publishers, there is tremendous things that we can do to kind of move and optimize even within a programmatic architecture. And then finally, think about the PMP as that hinge that connects a lot of the direct activities that are happening in many places to the indirect activities that are certainly growing and blossoming across the way. So with that, I will thank you for your time and attention. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. I'm also around for the rest of the conference if you want to talk about it there. No questions? Great, I answered everything. Awesome. All right. Oh, hey there. Yes.
I guess my question is about, a little terminology / focus, right? Which is, I've often thought that the words that really make a lot of sense, what you've started to use, is really guaranteed and non-guaranteed buying, and that private marketplaces exist for the non-guaranteed buying world.
You bet.
But much more for not the performance dollars, which the world typically thinks of as the open exchange dollars. And so that often it seems that the reason people say private marketplaces don't work is because they're 3 times expensive based on an open exchange, when really, again, I think this is what you're driving at. Private marketplaces are actually much more effective as a non-guaranteed way to buy the audiences you might buy in a guaranteed way when you need to test into that publisher, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess it's a way of asking, am I right? Is that what you're seeing?
Partially, yes. But I'm also seeing the days of the bargains are somewhat gone programmatically. So remember the early days of eBay when you'd be like, I bought this thing, it's $300 and I got it for 15 because no one else bid, right? I think we're now kind of leaving that era programmatically as well, where some of the really valuable impressions that you could get for really low CPMs are disappearing or at least lessening. So I think part of what we're seeing in the open is we're seeing some really big high bids, CPM bids, for specific pieces of inventory, even in the open. And that's communicating that, hey, there's real value here. We really want this individual. So the private marketplace can function to just allow you to see more of those people, before anyone else does, and kind of take them off the table before it gets to the open. And that could help, very from a budget and efficiency way, deliver on a direct response deal. But I do think absolutely this is extending more to brand or kind of softer kind of educational metrics as well, and that certainly is a big part of what's happening. But our average CPMs in the open have grown tremendously, so that if you look at an individual bid, you may actually be paying the same in the open as in the private marketplace in many cases. Anyway, thanks for your time.